Time to make sense of business. On this interactive segment, we are looking at climate resilience and water security. The showers of blessings are here with us. I'm talking about the rains, and climate resilience and water security right now is the best time for that, and especially when you talk about water collection. And joining me in studio very quickly is Engineer Benjamin Ochele, who is the Coordination Manager at Water Experts Davis and Shatleaf. Karibu sana, Bwana Benjamin.
Thank you so much, Mwananjue.
Very quickly, how has climate change affected water security in the country, and what viable options are there to ensure that we prudent harnessing of the little water that we have?
Great. To highlight, climate change has had devastating effects on water availability in Kenya. And you can attest to the fact that we've had prolonged droughts between 2022 and 2023. We had extreme droughts. Then immediately after that, we got serious rains, that were said to be close to El Nino level. And we experienced a season of extreme flooding. Now, during the drought period, we had a lot of effects on drought, especially on the arid and semi-arid areas, where we had water reservoirs drying up, water wells drying up, and people losing livestock, in that sense. And we also experienced a bit of migration, where people, left the setup of their social community environment and went to congest resources where they could get aid or where there were still active water supply sources. So this has been quite extreme, especially for communities, affecting even their socio-economic setup in terms of, kids being unable to go to school, there's no food, drying up of various pasture available for our livestock. Yes.
And how much innovation is going into coming up with climate-smart technologies when it comes to water management? I'm talking about this because I've seen companies like Elgon Kenya, they make dam liners, and many farmers have just realized that not only can we do fishing with this, they can be used as a water reservoir.
I agree with you. The future of water conservation in Kenya is vested in technology. And when we talk about technology, we are looking at not only the aspect of having smart equipment in terms of running the boreholes and the water extraction equipment that you have or sources. We're also talking about smart agriculture. And what you just mentioned, smart agriculture involves use of the modern technology in agricultural practices and using smart ways of irrigation, where we're running away from the flooding system, where people, you just flood your farm and waste water, but we're adopting systems like drip systems, and this can only come from water that is stored. You first of all store it, you manage the wastage, and then you consume it with time in a measured way. We're also talking about things to do with drought-resilient crops that we should have. And lastly, in the technology end, we are talking about monitoring the storage, the equipment that we have, so that we can predict their failures. Like we have several companies today that have remote monitoring equipment, where we can predict the expected failure on equipment. And you can easily monitor the performance to a point where the efficiency goes down, you make decisions around having them serviced.
And I want to put this into context because for our viewers, the hottest year on record was last year, 2024.
Yes.
And the last 10 hottest years have been the last 10 years.
Absolutely.
Let's just show you how deep we are into arid and semi-arid. Let's talk about arid and semi-arid. Those regions, they get the worst when it comes to water shortages and water mitigations.
Yes.
What are the long-term solutions for these people, and especially when it comes to companies like yours?
Great. I want to give credit to the government, both levels. That's the national government, because as Davis and Shatleaf, as you've mentioned, we've participated in some of the water equipment reviving or boreholes reviving exercises through the National Steering Committee and Disaster Response, where we managed to rehabilitate 101 boreholes across the country. And most of them were in the arid areas. Now, in these regions, we've had county governments install boreholes, but now the challenge that comes in is the O&M aspect of this infrastructure. People are adopting green energy today, but now even the levels of governments, as I've mentioned, we give them credit. There is little resources that is put towards O&M aspect of these resources. Now, private companies like Davis and Shatcliffe have come up, and we have very active partners even now. We've come up with what we call Improving Lives initiatives, where it's a CSR setup. In the past, I would say like 4 years, we've done over 700 projects across the country and across our counties. And this has impacted, just numbers above 1.5 million, Kenyans, those who are in need of water, and most of our projects are in the arid and semi-arid areas. Yes.
And let's look at urbanization.
Sure.
And let's be honest, urbanization is putting more pressure on the meager water resources that we have. And I'll give you a practical example. When I came to Nairobi, after high school in 2001. And for the last 5 years, we've had water rationing. But when I came in the 2001, there was no water rationing.
Sure.
And now we are putting pressure as counties,
Yeah.
How can county governments ensure there's prudent management of water resources?
Sure. Now, just to give you some statistics, if you look at the early 90s in Nairobi, the population within the city was around 1.3 million or thereabout. Now, the latest census, I think we are talking about numbers above 5 million population.
Yeah.
Now, we are told that, within the city alone, with that element of congestion, greater population is in the informal sector that is highly affected by water supply. Now, this also brings strain into our rivers in terms of I would say exploitation. We have the solid waste that goes into the rivers, areas where people can expect to extract some little water to use. And the level of recycling that we have in our country today has not reached the point that is required. We need to do that. Now, lastly, on the boreholes within the city, several years ago, we would have boreholes to a depth of 100 meters, but because of depletion and because of the urbanization, the congestion, the resources that we have, several boreholes in Nairobi today, and there are so many, go to a depth of more than 350 meters, which also require a higher capital investment. Yes. So I believe that our counties should work on preventing urbanization. We should decentralize water supply. We should form committees to manage this water infrastructure so that before they fail, they are repaired, so that we don't have communities moving from one region to another where they can get access to water and these services.
I know population is putting a strain on water management here in the country, but what are other water barriers, water security barriers that we have in the country, and how can we, work around them?
Sure. I believe the government has put in very strong measures in terms of policies. The Water Act today has given the responsibility of water management to various institutions, including the county governments in terms of appointing WSPs, and of course they are regulated. And for us to manage water properly in our societies, we need to focus on adoption of conservation measures, so that we prevent misuse of water across the nation.
It's a good thing you've mentioned good policies, and especially in the water ministry.
Yes.
But what else can the government prioritize in terms of policies? I'm talking about this because of things like transborder and transboundary cooperation, like the Lake Basin.
Yeah, the Lake Basin, yes.
And also I'm talking about integrated water management.
Exactly. Yeah. What that brings into place is efficient use of water. When you manage the resource effectively and put in measures that protect misuse, it helps. Now, in terms of policies, I would say that Kenya is not deficient of laws that govern water management. The biggest challenge that we have is enforcement. The second challenge that we have is the resources that follow the political will. Because, for example, today the president is running, cleaning of Nairobi River, for argument's sake. Now, there is the extraction aspect of the debris that goes there, but what are we doing to control the continuous deposits that we are getting from this. We are having reports that 80% of the industries in Nairobi do not have proper effluent treatment processes where we can get this water and reuse it. So when it comes to that, with all the statistics available, the enforcement aspect on these policies that are already in place will be big. And just ensuring that institutions, individuals, and even the two levels of government adopt technology today to ensure that water usage is measured, is paid for, and is monitored. Yes.
And what new technologies do we have in the market? I'm talking about this because we've seen in Arab countries, we've seen in the Middle East, we've seen in Israel, where they are using out of this world technologies, even to some lightnings that even make rain fall when it's not supposed to. What technologies do we have in Kenya, and especially for the local Mwananchi?
We may not be there yet as a country in terms of the extreme advanced technology where you can create rain, but I believe the little that we have is sufficient for us to ensure that the common Mwananchi enjoy these resources.
The issue is the management itself.
The issue is the management. Actually, as I just mentioned a few minutes ago about the coming in of solar energy as a way of extracting water underground. That's a very beautiful technology. And we have cases where even schools, primary school kids, still use hand pumps. That's a technology that we should phase out. And today we have solar solutions, smart pumping systems that are extremely affordable. If you look at the controllers that we used to use in boreholes and water management several years ago, they were very pricey. But today we are talking of values that are quite low. Now, as Davis and Shatcliffe, we also have the BMS system that is being now applied by various institutions. In terms of a building like this, you just manage how you consume your water, how you consume your electricity, and how various resources within the building operate. And lastly, we also have, as I mentioned, we have in the market today systems that can help you monitor performance of your equipment. When you monitor the performance of your equipment, you can easily know when the efficiency goes down, so that we don't have a whole community, an old bowl that is relied on by the community going down because there was dust on solar panels. These are some things that you can easily monitor through this equipment. You can know when the efficiency goes down, and then you adopt repair mechanisms or maintenance mechanisms before they die. Yes.
What solution do we have as a country because of the wastewater that we see a lot of water go down the drain, and especially in the rainy season? Waste water and recycling, and more specifically on desalination.
I agree with you. The community and the population at large has a responsibility, and especially the private sector. In terms of funding, as I mentioned, that the private sector, we have a lot of partnerships that we are coming up with ways in which we can involve the community through demo farms, and also just to help people understand that water is a resource for everyone, and it can be used for the benefit of all. Now, as a country, we need to just be alive to the fact that management of water goes beyond just clean water management. As you've mentioned, wastewater is one aspect, source of water that people do not know. If we have this treated properly, it can be used into other, it can be put into other uses like agriculture that can help our country. Yeah.
It's a good thing that you mentioned that the technology that we're seeing in the Middle East and in Israel, we are not there yet. But it's a good thing that technology is evolving at a very, very fast pace. And I'm looking at countries like Israel. We've seen our MPs go to benchmark in Israel, in Singapore, and latest in Cape Town. What some of these lessons that we can adopt as a country that will ensure that not only do we conserve water, we collect water, and prudent use of water?
Israel, for example, just to pick your point, the greater geographical landmap of Israel is more or less, I would say, a desert. And I I'm aware that in the yesteryears there was some element of partnerships, and they're still there. I know there are exchange programs where Kenya sends some students to go to Israel to study. I have relatives who've gone to study the level of agriculture, how they prudently use their water. We have, as you mentioned, about desalinization of water to help apply that clean water in other aspects of irrigation. I think those are things that we've reached a point where with our education system and our research mechanisms, we can adopt so that we have drought resilient products, crops. We have smart agriculture that is applied elsewhere in other countries. Yes.
A final word, and especially on the future of water conservation and of course the challenges that come with it.
Sure. The future of water in Kenya relies on goodwill of both the government and the private sector.
Including smart farming.
Including smart farming. And I believe that when the private sector come together through PPP projects, and the NGOs are also doing a very great thing in our market today, in our societies. It involves several stakeholders. We come together, we bring resources together and ensure that we put in measures that can help us extract groundwater prudently, treat it, and help our people consume clean water. Yes.
Many thanks indeed. That is Engineer Benjamin Ochele, who is the Coordination Manager at Water Expert at Davis and Shatleaf. And indeed, in as much as we cannot adopt some of the technologies that we have seen in countries like Israel, Singapore, South Africa, we indeed have a role to play in terms of water management in the country to mitigate climate change. Thank you so much indeed for coming, and thank you for your insight. A very interesting conversation that we'll be having.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, unfortunately we are out of time, but this is a conversation that we can really open up, and especially now that we have the rains. Thank you indeed so much for joining us.
Thank you.
We continue with our news, where the National Treasury will deploy linked